I hired a PI to find my husband I cheated on. I never knew one mistake, one moment, could erase my entire life. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just vanished, and I've been chasing a ghost ever since. Subscribe to hear the truth behind what really happened. I still remember the day Jason disappeared like it was yesterday. Though years have passed, the silence of that morning echoes louder than any scream ever could. It wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors or shouted accusations. No pleading, no tears, no ultimatums. Just an eerie calm that wrapped the house in a suffocating stillness. When I woke up, he was already gone. The bed was cold on one side, his side. The coffee pot hadn't been touched. His favorite mug sat clean, as if untouched since the night before. His keys, wallet, phone, all gone. I checked the usual spots, the kitchen counter, the living room table, the nightstand drawer. Nothing. No note. No message. No goodbye. It was as if he evaporated into thin air. But it wasn't an accident, or an impulsive flight. I knew this silence wasn't absence, it was punishment. Jason's disappearance was precise, surgical, calculated in a way that made my blood run cold. There was no chaos, no confrontation to justify his leaving. Instead, he chose the quietest, most devastating way out, to vanish without a trace. That morning, I stood in the empty kitchen, phone trembling in my hand, unable to call him, because I knew the call would never be answered. Jason had always been a man of routine. Predictable in his habits, yet fiercely private. We lived a comfortable life, a nice house, stable jobs, friends, and a family that trusted us. Or so I thought. In the weeks leading to his disappearance, I sensed the subtle cracks forming beneath the surface. The silences had grown longer between us. His eyes no longer met mine with warmth, but rather with a distant coldness. There were no fights, no explosive moments, just the gradual drifting apart that no one notices until it's too late. I begged myself to believe it was temporary. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe work was getting to him. Maybe it was me, and I just needed to be more patient. But deep down, I felt the chasm widening. Still, nothing prepared me for waking up to an empty house, no trace of him anywhere. The initial shock numbed me. I paced the rooms like a trapped animal. His clothes were still in the closet. His shoes lined up by the door. His laptop was open on the desk, a half-written email staring back at me. "Jason." I called out, voice breaking. Silence. I tried calling his phone, straight to voicemail. I sent texts, desperate and pleading, but none were read. I contacted his closest friends and colleagues, but no one had seen him. Hours turned into a day. A day into two. Panic clawed its way up inside me. Was he hurt? Had he been kidnapped? Did he leave me for someone else? The possibilities spiraled into a terrifying vortex of uncertainty. I reported him missing after 48 hours. The police were polite, but skeptical. Adults don't usually vanish without a trace, without a reason. They took a report, ran a check, but nothing suspicious came up. No recent threats, no financial troubles, no enemies. No sign of forced entry or struggle in the house. When they searched his phone records, there was one call, brief, untraceable, just hours before he disappeared. The detective's eyes narrowed, but that was all he could say. Jason had vanished like a ghost, leaving behind only a trail of questions. I remember sitting on the porch one evening, clutching a glass of wine, staring at the sunset as tears blurred my vision. Why would he do this? Why punish me with silence? There were no signs of rage or anger in his disappearance. No shouting or accusations. Just absence. A perfectly executed punishment. Was I to blame? I started replaying every conversation, every look, every moment we shared. The cracks I thought were minor, maybe even invisible, suddenly became glaring. Something had broken between us. Something I hadn't seen, or refused to see. That's when the whispers began. I never imagined my personal tragedy would become public. But in the digital age, privacy is a fragile illusion. I posted on social media, pleading for help. Asking if anyone had seen him. Sharing pictures, memories, fragments of hope. But instead of support, the comments turned cold. People speculated, whispered accusations. What had I done wrong? Was this some kind of abandonment? Some kind of betrayal? My story was distorted into gossip, into headlines, into an internet spectacle. The worst part wasn't strangers, it was those closest to me. Friends started distancing themselves, sending awkward messages, avoiding my calls. Family members questioned me behind closed doors, casting subtle judgment. They didn't say it aloud, but their eyes accused me. Something was wrong. Something I wasn't telling. And deep down, I knew they were right. I wasn't telling. Because the truth was darker than anyone imagined. The secret I carried, an affair, was the stone that sank our marriage. It wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it was a catastrophic mistake that shattered the foundation Jason and I had built. And in his silence, his disappearance, I realized, this was his way of punishing me. Not with anger, but with disappearance. That day, as I sat alone in the quiet house Jason left behind, I understood one thing painfully clear. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was an erasure. An unspoken message. The beginning of a hunt, for a man who no longer wanted to be found. The days after Jason vanished blurred together in a relentless cycle of hope and despair. I thought the hardest part was waking up to an empty house, but it was the weeks that followed, the relentless silence, that truly broke me. I became a ghost haunting my own life. Every morning I woke with the desperate hope that today would be different. That the phone would ring with his voice on the other end, explaining everything. But it never did. I called his phone hundreds of times. Each ring unanswered was a dagger twisting deeper. I messaged his friends, his colleagues, even people I barely knew from his past. I scoured social media, watching for any sign, a post, a photo, a mention. Nothing. I visited the places he used to frequent, the coffee shop where he'd sit reading, the gym where he trained, the bookstore where he bought his novels. I even waited outside his office, hoping he'd walk out like nothing happened. Nothing. No one had seen him. No one knew where he was. Then came the Read It post. I had made a desperate plea on a subreddit for missing persons. A kind-hearted stranger cross-posted my story, trying to help. But instead of sympathy, it ignited something far worse. Strangers who didn't know me or Jason began dissecting our story, spinning dark theories. She must have done something terrible. Probably ran off with someone else. How do you just vanish without a word? She's clearly the villain here. The comments piled up, harsh and cruel. And like wildfire, the story spread across other platforms. Within days, I was the subject of online harassment. My inbox flooded with hateful messages and anonymous accusations. People speculated on my guilt, some assuming I had something to do with his disappearance. I watched, helpless, as strangers constructed narratives where I was the bad guy. A cheating wife. A liar. The cause of a perfect family's ruin. But it wasn't just the internet. The isolation hit hardest in real life. Some friends tried to offer support, but quickly withdrew when the rumors started. Others gave me the cold shoulder, unsure what to believe or too uncomfortable to ask. Even family members, who once comforted me, began treating me like a stranger. Their eyes avoided mine at gatherings. Their words were clipped and distant. I overheard conversations, half-heard whispers suggesting that Jason must have left because of me. That the truth was probably darker than I admitted. Everywhere I turned, I felt like I was being judged. Even people I loved started to doubt me. I was drowning in loneliness, shame, and a growing sense of panic. Because deep down, I knew I wasn't innocent. I hadn't been truthful, not fully. The affair had started months before Jason disappeared. It was a mistake born out of loneliness and desperation. A single moment of weakness that spiraled into something I couldn't control. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing serious, just an escape, a fleeting connection to feel alive again. But secrets have a way of poisoning everything. Jason never confronted me about it. Not once. There was no shouting match. No tears. No emotional reckoning. Instead, he retreated. The man I married, the one who once looked at me like I was everything, slowly faded away. And then, one morning, he vanished. Losing Jason wasn't like losing someone to death. He was alive somewhere, but unreachable. He had erased himself from my life with surgical precision. Every unanswered call, an unopened message, was a reminder that the man I knew no longer existed. I started doubting myself. Was I imagining the warmth we once shared? Had I been blind to his unhappiness? Was the man I loved gone long before he disappeared? I stayed up nights replaying every conversation, searching for signs I missed. But the harder I searched, the more fragmented my memories became. I refused to give up. I became obsessed with finding Jason. Every lead, every whisper of a clue, I chased it. I tracked his credit card activity. Nothing. His bank accounts untouched. No evidence he had accessed anything in months. I contacted every friend, colleague, and distant relative again and again, hoping someone slipped up, revealed something. The search consumed me. My work suffered. My health deteriorated. I lost weight. I stopped seeing people. I stopped living. Every day was a fight against despair. The online vitriol continued. I was accused of orchestrating his disappearance. Some said I pushed him to leave. Others claimed I knew more than I let on. The judgment was brutal and unrelenting. 6 months passed. Jason was still gone. My life was a hollow shell filled with questions that had no answers. And my reputation, both online and offline, was in tatters. I was isolated, broken, and more alone than I'd ever been. It was clear I couldn't do this alone. I needed help. I needed someone who could uncover what I couldn't. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator. The decision felt like admitting defeat, but it was also my last hope. If Jason was out there, somewhere, hiding or running, I needed someone with the skills and resources to find him. The man who once was my husband had vanished without a trace, and I was about to chase a ghost. If you asked me to pinpoint the moment everything shattered, I'd say it wasn't the day Jason disappeared. It was the day I crossed the line I promised I never would. 4 months, maybe years before Jason vanished, I carried a secret, one I was ashamed to admit, even to myself. An affair. The word itself tastes bitter on my tongue. The memory of it is a wound I reopened every time I thought about how it all started. It was never supposed to happen. Not with someone else. Not like this. But loneliness has a way of sneaking in, twisting even the strongest bonds. Jason and I, we weren't perfect, but we had built a life together. Or so I believed. I don't know exactly when it started. Maybe it was a look, a touch, a moment of weakness. But somehow, in the cracks of our failing marriage, I found myself drawn to someone else. It wasn't about love. It was about escape. I tried to convince myself it was harmless. Just an emotional distraction, something temporary. But it spiraled quickly. The man I cheated with was everything Jason wasn't: attentive, present, exciting. He filled the void Jason left. Every stolen moment added to my guilt, but also to my desperation. I felt trapped in a web of lies I couldn't untangle. What I didn't realize was that this betrayal was more than a personal failing. It fractured not just our marriage, it shattered the entire family. Jason came from a close-knit family, the kind where secrets don't stay hidden for long. When the truth finally came out, I expected anger. I expected screaming, confrontation, a messy explosion that would at least bring the hidden chaos to light. But Jason didn't explode. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He withdrew. His reaction was cold, distant, surgical. He didn't fight to save us. Instead, he started erasing us. Jason stopped coming home on time. He stopped answering calls. He began deleting photos from his phone, removing shared memories, as if trying to wipe out our entire history. I begged for answers. For a chance to fix things. But he remained silent. There was an event, a catalyst, something that finally pushed him to disappear. I won't go into detail now, because it's complicated and dark, but it was the last thread holding us together. After that day, Jason made his decision. Unlike the dramas in movies, Jason didn't storm out or leave a note. He vanished with precision. Every account he had in his name was closed or transferred. He blocked me everywhere: phone, email, social media. Our joint accounts were split, his lawyer filing divorce papers from another state. Was it revenge? Was it self-preservation? Or was it something else, something deeper and colder? I've asked myself 1,000 times. In the aftermath, I realized how deeply my mistake had cost us everything. I had not just betrayed Jason, but the trust, the love, and the life we had built. And in response, he erased me from his world. The worst part was not losing him. It was losing the man I thought I knew. Because the Jason who disappeared was not the man who loved me. He became a stranger. A ghost. Our marriage didn't end with a bang. It ended in silence. And silence is a brutal punishment. Every day, I woke with a crushing guilt. I had betrayed someone who once trusted me completely. And now, that trust was gone, replaced by cold indifference. Jason's disappearance wasn't just about leaving. It was about erasing. He wiped the slate clean. He shut the door. And in doing so, he left me to pick up the pieces. Despite everything, I still wanted answers. I needed to understand why he chose this path. But Jason had disappeared so completely that finding him felt impossible. After months of despair, I decided I couldn't stay silent. I had to face the consequences of my actions. I had to find Jason. Even if it meant confronting the darkest parts of my past. That's when I contacted a private investigator. Someone who could follow the trail I couldn't see. Someone who could find the man who no longer wanted to be found. The mistake I made had destroyed everything. But the hunt was just beginning. Because no matter how far he ran, I was determined to find him. The moment Jason disappeared, it felt like my entire world crumbled into dust. But the real devastation didn't come with his absence, it came with what he left behind: nothing. No closure, no explanation, just a void filled with cold silence. And in that silence, I discovered what erasing someone truly meant. I thought the hardest part would be the loneliness. But it wasn't. The worst was the complete and utter erasure. Jason blocked me everywhere. His phone number vanished from my contacts. Emails bounced back as undeliverable. Our friends were told not to speak to me about him. Family gatherings were no longer shared. It was as if I had become a ghost, present once, but wiped clean from his life and everyone around him. Then came the legal blow. I received the divorce papers, filed from another state, one I barely knew he'd even visited. Jason didn't want to face me. He didn't want a messy fight. He just wanted to end it, quietly and cleanly. The documents were cold and clinical, detailing the division of assets and custody arrangements with no room for negotiation. It was the final, legal seal on the erasure he had begun months ago. The divorce wasn't just about money or property. It was about dividing a life, splitting years of shared history into what belonged to him and what belonged to me. Jason made sure everything was cleanly separated, our bank accounts, our investments, even mutual friends were gently but firmly told to choose sides. With the divorce finalized, the isolation around me thickened. Friends who once welcomed me now avoided me. Family who once offered comfort now questioned my every word. Even strangers on the street seemed to judge me with cold eyes. The silence from Jason wasn't just about cutting contact. It was a message. One I had to decipher in the cold light of reality. Was his disappearance an act of revenge? A way to punish me for what I had done? Or was it self-protection, an attempt to shield himself from the pain? I wrestled with this question endlessly. The thought that Jason might have disappeared to hurt me was both terrifying and painful. But the idea that he had vanished to protect himself was equally heartbreaking. Either way, the outcome was the same. He had erased me. I once believed that anger was the ultimate response to betrayal. But Jason's silence taught me a harsher truth. Indifference hurts more than hate. It's the absence of feeling, the shutting down of connection. His disappearance was the coldest form of punishment. While I was left in ruins, the world moved on without him. News of the divorce spread quietly through the circles we once shared. Jason was a ghost now, present in memories, but absent in reality. Without answers, every day became a battle. I was haunted not by what Jason had done, but by what he hadn't done. He didn't fight. He didn't explain. He just vanished. And that silence was deafening. Part of me wanted revenge. To make him feel the pain I felt. But another part, deeper and more vulnerable, wanted healing. A way to understand what happened. A way to find the man I had loved buried beneath the stranger he had become. I realized that if I wanted answers, I couldn't wait. I couldn't rely on hope or chance. I had to take control. The decision to hire a private investigator was both terrifying and necessary. It was an admission that I couldn't find Jason on my own. That I needed someone skilled, someone with resources, to chase the ghost he had become. At first, the PI found little. Jason had covered his tracks well. No credit card activity. No phone usage. No official records. But slowly, clues began to surface. Small, seemingly insignificant details that pointed toward a place, Oregon. I had no idea why Jason chose Oregon. A place far from everything we knew. A place where he could disappear completely. Each clue was both a breakthrough and a heartbreak. Closer, but still out of reach. Hope mixed with despair. Jason had erased me from his life with surgical precision. But I wasn't ready to be erased from his story. The hunt was growing more real. And Oregon was the next chapter. The moment I decided to hire a private investigator, I felt like I was crossing an invisible line. It was an admission that I was no longer in control, that the man I once knew had become a ghost beyond my reach. But desperation has a way of stripping away pride. I needed answers. I needed Jason. I met Marcus, the PI, in a small, nondescript office downtown. He was a man who listened without judgment, asking questions I wasn't sure I wanted to answer. I laid it all out, the disappearance, the silence, the affair I hadn't confessed fully to anyone, the divorce papers, the rumors, and my desperate hope to find Jason. Marcus didn't promise miracles. He told me Jason was a man who had planned his disappearance carefully. There would be no easy traces, no obvious clues. But he believed there was a trail, faint as it was. Marcus started digging. Phone records, credit card statements, social media footprints, he sifted through everything. The first few weeks yielded nothing. Jason had erased his digital presence with meticulous care. Then, Marcus found something, a brief, encrypted message sent from an anonymous number. It was the first signal in months. It pointed toward Oregon. Oregon was a vast, wild place, known for its forests, small towns, and anonymity. It was the perfect hiding place. Marcus discovered a rental property under a false name. A few utility bills paid in cash. A barely used email account linked to a local cafe. These clues, though small, ignited a flame of hope. Jason was alive. Jason was somewhere. With hope came fear. What if Jason didn't want to be found? What if I wasn't the person he wanted anymore? Marcus warned me that finding Jason was just the first step. Meeting him might be even harder. The man I sought might be a stranger. I booked a flight to Oregon. I had no plan beyond following Marcus's lead. The anticipation was suffocating. The air smelled different. The landscape was unfamiliar. Everything felt distant and surreal. Marcus and I drove through small towns and thick forests, tracing Jason's last known movements. Every stop brought new questions. At the local cafe linked to the email account, Marcus struck up conversations. No one knew Jason well. But one waitress remembered a man fitting his description, quiet, withdrawn, always alone. That glimpse was enough. Jason was out there. I realized then that I wasn't chasing the man I knew. I was chasing the idea of him, the ghost of our past. The hunt had brought me closer, but the real challenge was still ahead. Because sometimes, finding someone means confronting the unbearable truth.